All right. Welcome to today's class on our ISO 500 series. So the last time we met, we did a quick introduction to what ISO 500 as an examination is. Whereby we'll look at some of the responsibility of an Azure security engineer. So we mentioned that ISO 500 is actually an Azure security engineer certifications that actually makes you to become a cloud security engineer focusing on Microsoft Azure solutions.
Hmm.
Right. So we'll look at some responsibilities for an Azure security engineer, including managing the security posture for an Azure tenant, implementing threat protections, then also identifying and remediating vulnerabilities. So generally, as an Azure security engineer, you're responsible for implementing regulatory compliance control for Azure infrastructures. And it includes identity and access, which is actually what we started our discussion with. Then network, compute, storage, data, applications, talk about asset management, backup and recovery, and DevOps security. Because DevSecOps today as a skill set, they need a security person to also work with them or becoming a DevSecOps.
Is that
So
part of what you do in your present role?
no. I'm a technical architect. I do that anyway, but
Okay, but what's
it's
the
when
difference?
so for DevSecOps, majorly what they are doing, right, is actually the combination of DevOps and security, right?
Okay,
But because my current role, I'm just a technical architect focusing on security. So when there are
oh,
some DevOps pipeline projects, so we are introduced to ensure that the pipeline security and all that, right?
mm,
So focusing on security majorly. But again, there's always opportunity, right, for different roles. Maybe in a future role, you're interested in DevOps, right? So your security knowledge will also be still be useful, right? Because again, for every infrastructure, there is always a need for a security engineer. Could be
mm,
on-prem for cybersecurity, then in cloud, then cloud security. So basically, as an Azure security engineer, you work with architects, you work with Azure administrators, you work with developers, right, to plan and implement solutions that meet security and compliance requirements. And again, you can also collaborate with security operations, right, in responding to security incidents especially in Azure. So majorly for a security engineer, it is very important that you are familiar with Microsoft Entra ID as well as compute, network, and storage in Azure. So that's actually where Azure security focuses on. Entra
yeah,
ID, compute, network, and storage. So looking at how we can secure identity and access, how we can secure networks, how we can secure the compute, the storage, the database, then also using Defender for cloud and Microsoft Sentinel because you'll be able to work with those tools. Very important. Um, then on our introduction, we started with discussion on talking about what Microsoft Entra ID is, where we mentioned that a Microsoft Entra ID is a cloud-based identity and access management service that your employee can use to access external resources. And we mentioned examples of resources, including Microsoft 365, the Azure portal, and thousands of other SaaS applications, SaaS being software as a service applications. So majorly, the Entra ID helps your users to access internal resources also like applications on your corporate internet and any cloud applications that is developed for your own organization. So the developers have developed some applications internally for organizations to use different departments or different teams, right? With Entra ID, you'll be able to use such applications majorly. Then we also mention other people that also use the Entra ID, whereby we mention the IT administrators. They use Entra ID to control access to apps, to resources, so based on business requirements. So for an IT admin, we'll talk about system administrator, right? They are responsible. In my previous role, when I was an enterprise system engineer with InterSwitch, I'm managing both the on-prem infrastructure, both the cloud infrastructure. So we are actually running on a multi-cloud system,
Mm-hmm.
AWS, Azure, and so it was hybrid multi-cloud systems that we are majorly running on. So we have our on-prem systems, like all production applications hosted on-prem in the organization database. So the Azure is where the developers work. So they test, they do their development and testing on the Azure portal. Then they also do some testing also on AWS, depending on the kind of resources they will need for those applications. So working with the platform engineering and all that. But in terms of where our work comes in, we support them with their application access to any of the Azure resources that they have. Then also our developers also create some applications for different businesses, right? We're trying to automate a lot of things. So the support my team, we also help them to register such applications, right? So by the time we're talking about application management, you'll be able to understand app registration and enterprise applications. So we also mentioned that app developer also uses Entra ID, which they use as a standard base authentication provider that helps them add single sign-on, which is actually the most important thing to application that works with user existing credentials. Because you don't want to create an application and you're not giving different credentials for users. When we have Azure, where we have single sign-on, let them leverage on the same credential they have, and with that same credentials, one credential to access multiple applications, basically, right? So, and developers can also use the Microsoft Entra API, right, to build personalized experiences using organization data. Then we also mentioned that for any Microsoft 365, Office 365, or Azure, as well as Dynamics 365 CRM, right? You already have Entra ID because in every of these application I mentioned, Microsoft 365, Office 365, Azure, and Dynamics 365, right? Entra ID, they are all sitting on the Entra ID tenant majorly. Then we also mentioned things around the licenses that are available, where we mentioned the Entra ID free and the Entra ID P1 and P2, right? Then we'll mention the PLC Go also, the Entra ID, maybe depending on different use cases, right? We mentioned that you watched the recording for that. Then we also did a bit of overview of the Entra ID itself. We went around, right, to discuss different things around the Entra ID. Now, it is very important that after you choose your Microsoft Entra ID license, right, you will get access to some features. So the license that you have determines the features that you have access to. Like I mentioned, for this tenant now, I have Entra IDP2. And I told you there are two ways you can get this Entra IDP2. Either you purchase it as a standalone subscriptions, or Entra IDP2 can be part of Microsoft 365 subscriptions. So I mentioned that on this tenant, if I go to licenses here, I go to manage, I select all product here. So these are all the products, right, that I currently have in the organizations. If you check here from this list of products, I don't have Microsoft Entra ID P2 here. But because I have another license called Microsoft 365 E5, right? This is the highest of all Microsoft 365 subscriptions, right? The only thing is that it doesn't have Teams and audio conferencing. So part of the application that comes with this E5 is the Entra ID P2. It's
Okay,
part of
by
the
default.
application by default, right? So I can quickly show that to you again. So I go to users. So I went to the Office 365 Admin Center or Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Click on Active User. So I'll just select any random user that has that Microsoft 365 E5 assigned. So let me just use my user account, for example. So this account has the confirm. That doesn't have, this should have. So this user has the E5, assigned here. So because
Hmm.
of this E5, right, if we come down under applications here, I'll be able to see all the other applications. So if I go down the bit, search for Microsoft Entra. So Microsoft Entra ID, I have it with Microsoft 365 E5 Teams, right? So it's part. Then I also have it with Entra ID P2 standalone as part of Entra ID suite. So there was a feature I was trying out. I was trying to do some advanced features in Entra ID that P2 doesn't have. So I had to um, activate a trial for Entra ID suite because it has a lot of other features that the Entra ID feature doesn't have, right? So it's part of the, but the trials are already expired. So what I'm currently using is the Entra ID P2 that is part of this Microsoft 365 E5, which is like is the highest of all Microsoft license. So depending on the license, like I mentioned earlier, it will tell you what are the things that you have access to. For example, now, in terms of applications, right? Application management, one of the things that Microsoft Entra ID premium license does for you is that it helps you to manage your cloud applications and also your on-premise applications using what we call application prosy. So we're going to discuss that also, right? So using application prosy, using a single sign-on, using the My Apps portal, even using the software as a service apps, right? So application management is part of the features that comes with the license, depending on the license that you have. Then
So
another
that also
thing,
come with a license. So there are some licenses that doesn't have the the some of these
the
application.
features, yes. I told you
So
that there are like three categories. There's Microsoft Entra ID free. So once
yeah,
you subscribe to any Microsoft 365, so it comes with Microsoft Entra ID free, but it is limited to some features. Like the Entra ID free, I mentioned that it provides user and group management, on-prem directory synchronization, and basic reporting. Then self-service password change for cloud users. If you remember, we mentioned it. Then single sign-on on Azure, M365, and many popular SaaS. But Entra ID P1, in addition to the free features that are present in the Entra ID free, right? P1 also lets your hybrid users, to access both the on-premises applications and cloud resources. And it also supports advanced administrations, such as you want to create dynamic groups. We're going to mention that, then self-service group management, then Microsoft identity management and all that. Then the P2, addition to free and P1, right? So it offers other things like Microsoft Entra ID protections, right? Which is actually there to help provide risk-based conditional access to your applications and your critical organization's data. Then it also provides another feature called PIN, Privilege Identity Management, right? To help discover, restrict, and monitor administrators and their access to resources. And it provides what we call just-in-time access whenever it is needed. So those are, so depending as you increase in terms of license, it tells you, okay, these are additional features that you have. Like another feature that is common, right? So I'm assuming that we have P2 since the tenants are working on its P2, right? It has Entra authentication. So authentication is actually the fundamental in terms of anything you are doing on the Microsoft Entra ID, right? So it helps you to manage Entra self-service password resets, things around multi-factor authentications, custom band password list, even smart lockouts, right? So authentication does all those ones for you. Then for developers, Microsoft Entra ID helps them to build um, apps that sign into Microsoft identities. It can get token to call Microsoft Graphs or other Microsoft API as well as custom APIs. So for a developer now, depending on the license, the developer will have access to that. Then there's also another feature called business to business, B2B. What this does is that it helps you to manage your guest users and external partners while maintaining control over your own corporate data. Then the other one is the B2C, business to customers. So what this does is that it helps you to customize and control how users sign up, how they sign in, and manage your profile when using your apps. For example, now, like this popular social media application, Facebook, for example, now is an example of a B2C application. Why? Because Facebook created our applications, right? For people to be able to sign up. So when you sign up, what do? You create your profile, you use your probably your email to sign up for the applications, right? You can create your profile, you can manage your profile. The same thing with LinkedIn too, for example, right? These are business to customers applications. So you're managing everything yourself. You're managing your posts, you're managing your image and all that. Then another feature that it also have is a feature called I think it's on the, let me just check. So you can basically type it here, conditional access, right? So this conditional access, what it does is that it helps you to basically manage access to your cloud applications. Then there's a feature also called device management. With
Is that
device
conditional
management,
access policy?
yes, Microsoft Entra conditional here. So this is also one of the important features, right, that are available. You can create policies, right, basically in terms of accessing your cloud applications. It provides device management also, meaning that it helps you to manage how your cloud or your on-premises device access your corporate data. So you can't just have devices, accessing your corporate data without the needed privilege or the needed permission. Then another thing it does is to provide what we call domain services. Like for example now, you have the opportunity to create Azure virtual machines, right? And those virtual machines, you can join them to domain without even using domain controller because Azure already is providing that service for you, domain service. Then there's all called enterprise users, right? So in terms of managing license assignments, access to application, and setting up delegates using either groups or administrators rule, right? So we have a lot of enterprise applications as a feature. Then another feature it provides is hybrid identities, right? So there's all called Microsoft Entra ID Connect and also Microsoft Entra ID Connect Health, right? These particular features provide a single user identity for authentication and also authorization to all resources, regardless of its location. So whether the resource is on cloud or on-prem, with hybrid identity, right, you're able to use the feature. Remember I told you about the hamburger icon and I went to all services.
Yeah.
So yeah, the way they are separated in such a way that it's actually easy. I can actually categorize them. So if you go under identity, for example, now one of the features you're going to see is the hybrid identity management, talking about the Entra ID Connect and Entra ID Connect which you would dig into. Just wanted you to have an idea of overview of what is happening, right? Then another feature it provides what called identity governance. So still under this identity. So what this is doing is that it ensures compliance, right? Detects potential vulnerabilities affecting your organization's identity by sorry. It's manage your organization identity rather through employee, business partner, vendor, service, and applications access control. That's what identity governor done. So this was one I was mentioning identity protection. This one I actually detect potential vulnerabilities affecting your organization's identity. It also helps you to configure policies to respond to any suspicious actions. Then it takes appropriate actions to resolve them. That's what this Entra identity protection is doing. Then another thing feature that is common also is the manage identities for Azure resources. So this provide your Azure services with automatically manage identity in a Microsoft Entra ID that can authenticate any Microsoft Entra supported authentication services include talk about the Azure Key Vault and the rest. So talk about manage identities too. So those ones are for resources on Azure. They are not users identity, but they're for maybe applications identity. Then I mentioned PIM as well, which is the privilege identity management, which helps to manage, it helps to control so PIM is actually one of the features on the identity governance. It's also a features on its own as well. So what it does is to manage, control, and monitor access within the organization. So it includes access to resources in either Microsoft Entra ID and Azure and other Microsoft online services like the Microsoft 365, the likes of Microsoft Intune, usually. Then there's a part called monitoring and health. So for monitoring and health, right, majorly what you're doing is that you're these features helps to gain insight into the security and the usage patterns in your environment. So we have the likes of the Azure monitors, right? That helps us with some monitorings. Then another features. So there are a lot of features, right? Another features is it gives an identity. That's talking about workload identities, right? Which helps you to give an identity to your software workload, such as applications. You have some applications, you have some service, then you have some scripts or even containers as well, right? Majorly to authenticate and access other services and other resources. So these are some of the things we'll be looking at as we dive deeper in the in the training. So also another important thing, because a lot of times people mix things around some terminologies. So there's some terminologies that Microsoft actually take very serious when you talk about Intra ID itself. So things around, if you talk about identity and you talk about account. Now if you talk about identity is like it's actually like a team that can get authenticated. So identity can be a user with a username and password. Identity can also include applications or other servers that might require authentication through using secrets, keys, or using certificates. That's identity. We now talk about accounts. Account is an identity that has data associated with it. That means without identity, you can't have account. You must first of all have an identity. So once the identity has data associated with it, that becomes an account. I can create an identity without necessarily becoming an account. Until I associate data with it, then the identity becomes an account. For example, now I can create users in my Microsoft 365, for example. Now I have users that are no, let me check these, remove this filter. So I have a lot of users here. So some of them, like for example, now this user is not licensed, for example. Now you might not have Microsoft 365 license, but does the user have subscription in Azure? It has subscription in Azure. So that means one user is actually using this account, right? It has become an account because now its subscription is assigned, or this user has access to subscriptions, even though it doesn't have account. So the moment Subscription is assigned to the user, license, and data are provision, right? The account has emails, it has device associated with it, it has OneDrive, right? Then it's not just an identity again, it has become an account. Now, for Microsoft Entra ID accounts generally, right? It is actually an identity that is created through Microsoft ID or another Microsoft cloud service. What does it mean? So an account, for example, now your Facebook email or your Facebook credentials that you have is an account. Why? Because you have data associated with it. Your LinkedIn is an account. But what makes it a Microsoft Entra ID is that it is either you created the ID from the Entra ID, or you have removed this Entra. Let me go and favorite it back. Entra ID. Let me go and add it back to favorite so I can easily have it here. All right, I think it should be back. Okay, it's back. All right. So the moment you create the account from the Entra ID, automatically that is an Entra ID account. Like the account I created for you last week now, it is an Entra ID account. It's just like saying I have a Facebook account, I have a LinkedIn account, right? So the identity created in the Entra ID is Entra ID account. So it's either we are creating the account from here, right? If I go here in the Microsoft 365 also, and I search for the account I created for you, I'm going to see it here. So even though the account I created from Entra ID, right, the account is still showing here.
And the license it has will also be there.
Yeah, it has license. I think this was assigned later to it. But when I was creating, I know I didn't assign license. I only give you access to the Azure subscriptions. But because you have a data associated with it, it's an account, right? So either you create it from the Entra ID, from the Azure portal itself, from Microsoft 365, right? You create it with PowerShell, because everything that is happening at the back end is saving under this identity here, because which is actually like the original place where Entra is being managed. So anything that is created in terms of identity on Azure here, right, or is created on Microsoft 365 here, or I create it using PowerShell, because that's another way we can create an identity on account, right? Everything is being managed in this Microsoft Entra ID Admin Center. So the same user, if I come here to, I'm going to see the same users I'm seeing here under this Azure is the same user I'll be seeing here. It's also the same user that I'll be seeing here, because this is where all the users are currently being managed. This is where they are stored. Without the Entra ID, right? Those users will not even be existing. That's the reason why even if I delete the user from here, I still need to come here to do a permanent delete of the user. Because if I go here, I can select a user. It's okay. This user, let me delete this user. If I delete the user here and the user goes to deleted users, so if I refresh this, and I go to deleted users here, this user will be showing, okay? Still, let me refresh. So this was user I just deleted now, right? It's showing here. Now for this user now, from here, I only have the option to either restore the user or export. So if I have a lot of them, I can export them as a CSV. But if I don't need this user again at all, I still have to come here. Let me refresh this. So Entra can be from the identity portal here, or can also be from the Azure portal here. So if I'm in the Entra, so this user now, if I go to deleted user here, I'm going to see that same user here. Then here, I can now permanently delete this user. Meaning that every data associated with this user, if I don't restore them within 30 days, they are gone. Even Microsoft cannot recover them again. After 30 days of deletion, they are gone. So those are the types of users that we have, or we call them the Entra ID accounts. Then we have account administrators too. When you create a tenant, right? When this tenant is created initially, the first user that is created is called the global admin, because that is the user that will be that we initially be able to create other users. Like this, my user account, for example, now, when I created the tenants afresh before having all these other users, right? This was the first users that was created, even though the user has um, the name.microsoft.com. It was when I added this domain that the user domain changes to this current domain here. So for account administrators, right, majorly it is actually is a classic subscription administrator role, for billing ownership of subscriptions. That means it enables you to manage all subscriptions on the account. So if Microsoft needs to help me troubleshoot an issue regarding my subscriptions or anything like that, they will need the ID of this user. Why? Because this user is the account administrator, the first user that was created. Then we now have the service administrators. So they are like the same classic subscription role that you created to manage all resources, including access. And the role it's actually equivalent to access of a user who is assigned an owner role to a subscription scope. So that means that with these users, I can create other service administrator. I can say, okay, I want to create user, and the user maybe let me go back to active users here, for example. Let me pick one user. Let me pick this user, for example, now. This user is just like an ordinary user when I created it, because on that row, it's told me that there is no administrator role. So I can click on this manage role here for this user. So it's saying that this user is just a user, meaning that no admin center access. So if I want the users to have access to any of the admin center to become a service administrator, I'll select this, right? Then I can now change, okay, this is I'm creating, I just want this user to manage SharePoint only. Then I will grant access to SharePoint for this user. Or this user I'm creating, I just want this user to be managing our email services. Then I'll select that. Automatically now, this user's access level has been elevated from just being a user to becoming a service administrator to manage a particular service as part of the subscriptions. I don't know if it's making sense.
100%. I'm
Right.
assuming once it's done here, the same thing will be seen on the Entra ID page.
Exactly. Whatever I do here, so I can do it here, or let me leave this. I can go to Entra ID. So it's part of our discussion too. So I can pick any user. So let me pick the same user here. So it will tell me that this user has assigned role is 0, meaning that it's just an ordinary user. If I click on this 0 here, so I can add roles too. The only difference is that Entra has more role than M365. M365 only focus on some generic roles, right? Just focus on some generic roles, like okay, like that means center. If I want to show them by category, right? If I come down, show by category. So there are roles for collaboration, right? AI administrator, authentication policies. If I come down, so I see a lot of roles here by devices. Maybe it's a device administrator. I will, I will assign any of these roles for Intune, for printer, depending on then global administrator is a supervisor. We're going to get here. Then for identity. So this is in terms of it's kind of limited, right? It's better, but if you come here, I can add assignments here. If I click on add assignments for this user,
Well, what's the difference between assignment and role?
so they are the same thing, just this different name that they call it. So these are Entra ID role, right? Focusing on Entra ID, which has more things because if I click on here, I'm going to see more roles. Some of the roles here, right, are still here, but this has more roles than the other one. It has
Can
more
you type
roles.
in like say Sentinel there? Let's see. What role do we have? We don't have anything for contributor.
Okay, for those ones, that's you have to go through another. Let me go through this. Let me go through Azure. This type roles. Intro roles and administrator. Sections. Oh, okay. I don't have Sentinel active on this tenant.
Okay, okay, okay. How about Defender for Cloud?
So I think that's he wants you a security administrator. So you have
Okay,
access
security
to the
administrator.
administrator,
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
Once
okay.
a
Yeah, yeah,
security administrator, yeah.
yeah.
You have
Okay,
that.
okay.
So security
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
operations,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
security
Security.
administrators,
Okay, okay, okay,
security readers. So these are the three security roles here.
okay. Reader, operator, and administrator.
Administrators, yeah. Then for compliance too, from the compliance portal, you'll be able to see other roles too. So each of all this portal, they have some other additional roles. Like for example, let me leave this now. If I go to show call, let me go to compliance first. Now go to security portal too. So you see some roles peculiar to that particular service. Okay, still loading. So this is Microsoft Purview. It's actually compliance that manages some compliance. If I go to settings here, right, and I go to roles and scope here, so I'm able to see Microsoft Entra ID role. So that means it's picking this role from the Entra ID. It does some role groups as well. Let me go back to Entra ID. So this will actually streamline into things a compliance administrator needs, right? So to have access to this Microsoft Preview, either you're a global administrator, you're a compliance data administrator, or compliance administrator, security operator, security reader, security administrator, global reader, then attack simulator, administrator, then payload auto. So you can use those Entra ID role. I think role group is something that we need to create. So other roles that are available, you would see so subject matter requires. So you can create a role group based on what role you want to assign to the user. Similarly, also, if you go to the security, Microsoft Defender Portal Security Center, so for this as well, if you go to the settings also here, permissions first. So you also see some other things. So based on the Defender HDR, you have some rules available. So this entire portal is called Defender HDR. So rules that are peculiar to, so you can create custom rules here. Test investors. Let me see the permissions. So it tells you these are the ones that are available. Security operation, security posture. So you'll be able to like going drilling down to what you want. So be able to select different portal has different role basically. So you see that for Entra ID here, for endpoints is here, for emails and collaborations, right, is also here. Similarly, also if you even go to the Exchange Admin Center too, that also has its own permission too. So these are different services part of Microsoft 365. So for the Exchange, for majorly for emails and collaboration. So you see some admin roles also here too that are available too. So seeing things around communication compliance administrator, compliance administrator. So there are other roles here too and permission. So you can still see a security administrator, security role. So depending on the service that you're actually, focusing on at that point. Yeah. So for those owner contributor, so those are for Azure resources, right? So
Okay.
they are
Okay.
Azure role, Entra ID role. So they're different. So different, just like different services, so their compliance role, their security roles also. Even for Microsoft Teams, if I go to Microsoft Teams too, there are other roles under Microsoft Teams. Teams communication support, Teams communication specialist, Teams device administrator, and all that. So they're just like
SharePoint and the rest.
SharePoint administrator too. So there are
Okay.
a lot of roles for different services there. So if you come to for Azure resources itself, let me go back. So let me give an example. Let me just pick one of my subscriptions. So this subscription here, it is sitting, the two subscriptions here, they are sitting majorly on Azure. These two subscriptions, I cannot see them under M365. If I go to billing and I go to licenses here. So Microsoft 365 licenses are different from Azure. So I will not see all those virtual studio because it has nothing to do with Microsoft 365. So it's here. So for now, let me pick this subscription as an example. Now I can go to IAM access control for this now. Now for this, I can add role, then add. So either add a role assignment, co-administrator, or add a custom role. Let me select add role for that. Now this is now also divided into you have the job function roles and the privileged administrator roles. So for job functions rule, basically, what is that thing that the user wants to do, right? What level of access does the user or the application need for that subscription? So that's how I'll be able to see. Let me see. Let me type Sentinel here. Maybe I'll see anything in Sentinel. So Sentinel, you're seeing it now. So I have things on Sentinel automation contributor, Sentinel
Yeah.
business application, right? Because
Hmm.
it's an Azure resource, not on Entra.
Okay.
Yeah. So for
Okay.
Entra role, they're different from Azure roles.
Okay. So these ones are done at the subscription level.
No, for resources on Azure, either on
Okay. For
subscriptions,
resources.
oh yes, it's a
Okay. Okay.
resource
Okay.
role,
Okay.
it's a
Okay. Is a resource.
subscription, or it's a
Okay.
resource itself on Azure. So it has to be a
Is
resource on
Azure.
Azure. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Like
So
services on Azure, right?
exactly, exactly.
Okay.
So that's when we able to sell those ones. Then if it is privileged administrator role, so we have I think five of those ones for privilege. So either you are owner of the subscription, and for an owner basically helps to manage all Azure resources, including access. So if you're like you're giving an owner at let's say it's not showing. You're given access as owner as a management group, for example. Now that means every resource under that management group, you can manage all the resources. So it's actually like it's built on a newer authorization system called the Azure RBAC, role-based access control, right? Basically, so either an owner, contributor, user access administrator, or role-based access control administrator, or access review, right? But this grants you full access to manage all the resources, including the ability to assign roles in the Azure RBAC. So I mentioned one particular role here, which was the global administrator role. Now under M3 2, you can see that we have, because M3 is working with Entra ID2, is working with Exchange, Intune, and billing. So for billing now, has to do with billing regarding the Microsoft 365. So either you're a billing owner, a billing account reader, or billing contributor. But for Intune, right, for Intune, so based on things that had to do with Intune, yeah, the application manager, help desk operator, Intune run administrator, policy and profile management, and like that. Then for Exchange, which is for the emails, you see a lot of rules as well there. Then Entra ID, which is the one that is still sitting on Azure. So for the Entra ID here, you have this particular role, the global administrator role, the Entra global administrator role. Now, this guy has unlimited access to manage all management features.
It's the same thing that is created by default when a new subscription is created, right?
Exactly. So it's a super admin and you can create more global admin actually. So it is automatically assigned to whenever, so once you're creating Azure tenants, that is the role that Microsoft will assign to you. And you can have multiple global administrators. That means you can create other users and make them global administrators, right? But only the global administrator can assign admin roles to other global administrators or users. So you cannot, it's only a global administrator that can assign roles to another global administrator. So if you agree, that's why we make sure we talk about the principle of the least privileged access. You don't even use the global administrator to do things except it is necessary. Other roles cannot, they don't have the permission to do that thing. That's when we use the global administrator. So again, you say the only global administrator can reset password for all users, including global administrator, can also add and manage domain. So these are like two case scenarios. If you need to add or manage domain in your tenant, you need a global administrator role. Then if you need to reset password for all another global admin, you need a global admin role. In which in any case, it is not advised that just start giving people global because once this global admin is compromised, it's going to wreck the global can wreck a lot of havoc more than any other administrative role.
The whole company is in trouble.
Yeah. So we don't give everybody global administrator except you is a trusted person. So you say that the
Okay.
person who sign up for the online service automatically become global admin role. So and it's always very important to do an access review. Anybody agree to giving a global admin role? Does the person still need access to that particular role? So let's go back to our Azure. So I'm just trying to so that I can clarify those services for you. Now, when we talk about the Azure subscriptions, unlike M365, for this one, you either pay monthly or you pay annually for M365 subscriptions. So for any of the licenses that are available on the tenant, you're either paying monthly or annually. But for Azure subscriptions, you pay as you use. Call it pay as you go. You pay as you go. So if I deploy any resource, I deploy a virtual machine, for example, now, and the virtual machine is not currently running. The only thing Microsoft will charge me for is maybe the storage that the virtual machine is. But if it is running, they pay me for the usage at that time that it's run. Then I can also, shut it down. As soon as I shut it down, I stop paying for that. I stop paying for the operation that the PM is running. The only thing I'm paying for is in storage, right? That the PM is currently occupying. And again, you can have many subscriptions, and the subscriptions are always linked to a credit card. Because at the end of the month, Microsoft will calculate, okay, what was the users like, and they bill it. Except if you have an enterprise agreement with a Microsoft partner, that's the other way to it. Or you pay monthly for them. So for each of the subscription now, although these are like developer kind of subscriptions that was given as a Microsoft certified trainer. So every month, Microsoft gives me $150 credit. Right. Once it's finished, I have to wait for the month for it to renew again. But if it doesn't finish, it doesn't roll over to the new month. They'll just top it up back to make it 150 again.
Oh, okay. So once that bill is finished, your one has to wait till the next month. Then they'll top
Ex-
it up again.
Exactly. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
every month. Maybe I have a lot of processes that are running. I have a lot of
Mm.
people on the tenants on some of the subscriptions. So if they're running some things and the subscription disabled, once the 150 finish, it has a spending limit already configured. The subscription will just disable. So any services, any resources on that subscription will not work until it renews again, basically. Now that's subscription. So but because I'm not paying for this, Microsoft is giving me this for free. So I don't get to my credit card doesn't get charged. But I only have this credit to use for the moment. Once it's finished, it's finished. Now there's also a term that is very important for us to understand, and the term is tenant. When you talk about tenant, it's just like using scenario of a landlord and a tenant. Microsoft, they own the solutions, they own the data centers, right? They're the landlord. So we are coming to rent from their infrastructure to pay as we used, right? So when we talk about tenant, a tenant is a dedicated and a trusted instance of a Microsoft Entra ID. In other words, the only way you can have a tenant is either you subscribe to an Azure, you subscribe to any other Microsoft Online services like the Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365. That's when you can have a tenant. So again, tenant is actually automatically created when your organization sign up for a Microsoft cloud service subscriptions. So whether it's a Microsoft 365 subscriptions or a Dynamics 365 subscription, because those subscriptions need somewhere to stay for management. If I go back here now, all these subscriptions, they cannot just exist without a tenant. So that's what differentiates Microsoft Business Services with personal services. I have an Outlook account at outlook.com account, right? Because it's not a business service, I don't have a tenant with it. I don't have a tenant with it. It's just a personal something. Now, these subscriptions that I have on this tenant, I actually have it as part of a benefit from the tenant. Now, if I go back to the tenant, let me go to the settings. So this is the current tenant I am at the moment. If you notice there's a name for this. Why this was a default directory, this also was default directory. Now, if you check, this has gmail.onmicrosoft.com, while this one has outlook.onmicrosoft.com. So these are actually like my two emails I have. They are personal email. This particular one is actually at gmail.com, right? That was initially associated, that is actually associated with my Microsoft Certified Trainer account, my Microsoft Learn account, basically. Now, because as an MCT, Microsoft gave me one of the Azure subscriptions. Microsoft gave me one of the Azure subscriptions, right? Microsoft needed to create a default directory because a subscription cannot stay without a directory. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does make sense.
Yeah, so they needed to create a default directory because subscription needs a directory to stay. So automatically that directory was created. I didn't create it, but the moment a subscription was associated with it, for me to be able to claim the subscription and move the subscription to this particular tenant, yeah, a default directory had to be created for it. So for a tenant again, when we talk about Microsoft Service subscription, the subscription could include a Microsoft Azure subscription. It can be a Microsoft 365 subscription. It can even be a Microsoft Intune subscription because those relies on the tenants. And tenants generally they represent a single organization, and it is intended for managing your employee, managing your business application, and other internal resources. Again, you can create a tenant in an external configuration, which uses what we call customer identity and access management for your customer facing application. What do I mean? Let me go back to the settings. So for this particular tenant here, this was a tenant I create to host a client facing application. Now, I cannot create an application. Maybe if I go to enterprise application, let me just type enterprise application here. I'm trying to so I can cover the basics then now jump into this. So these are some of the enterprise applications that have been created in the organization. Now, all these applications here can only be accessed by people that have granted access on this tenant. So because I'm the admin of this tenant, right? This application has been created on this tenant. So for example, this now. So the user must either have identity on this tenant, or maybe the user is from a partner organization. For example, now
These are public facing, right?
they are not public. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. They are
Okay.
internal applications.
Okay, these applications are internal. Okay.
They are internal. So
Okay.
that's what I'm explaining, that it is only users in this organization
Okay.
that are granted
Internal
access to
users.
internal users on the
Okay.
Entra ID.
Okay.
But the customer identity and access management, which sometimes there used to be another one they call Azure B2C, right? Business to customer. So those are the one that is customer facing. So such applications, now the difference is that such applications, I cannot host them here as an enterprise application, because these are only meant for internal users or users that are guests. Maybe I have partner from other, maybe I have sister companies, right? I don't want to, they all use the same HR system, but they have their own modules. I can manage it here. I can invite them as a user, as a guest on this tenant, right? Then grant them access. Let's say, for example, now this application now, I want to grant user. Let me say I want to grant my own user account access, for example, now. Because my user is already existing here, I can just search for the user. Search for the user. Select and assign. So what it means is that if I know the URL of this application, right? If I know the URL of this application, I can just open a new tab, put the URL, and I'll be able to sign into the application. Why? Because I'm a member of the organization and I also have access to the application.
Yeah.
Now imagine that I'm the one that owns Facebook. Facebook has over, I don't know how many million customers they have, how many users now. So let's say 4 million. Imagine how to create 4 million users and I start granting them access to the application one after the other.
Not possible.
It's not possible. So that's where the customer identity and access management comes in place, because it's a solution for your customer facing application. We
That is
call
the
them
B2C.
the B2C, Microsoft Entra External ID. Because at that point, the only thing I need to do is to let me host the application. Now, this is hosted on Azure for me, right?
Mhm.
I can't host it here. I have to create what we call Azure B2C tenant.
Okay. So that application will be hosted on the Azure B2C tenant.
Exactly. So
Okay.
I'm creating a different
So public facing applications will surely be created on Azure B2C
exactly.
tenants. Okay.
So currently now, these are the two Azure B2C tenants that I have at the moment now. So if I go into this Entra, into this directory, right, I can now go and add and host the application in this particular directory. Automatically, the users will be able to come in, right? Sign up into the application, configure their profile the way they want their profile to be. So I don't need to manage their profile. I don't need to manage anything. Mine is to help them manage the user workflows. Okay, when you sign up, what's the next thing that you take? Okay, configure your profile, upload your picture. You want to set up your profile, maybe like a LinkedIn now, your work experience, upload your certifications and all that, right? So it has to be.
I'm trying to access Asamoro on the internet. I couldn't find it.
Like, what's that? This one.
Uh,
You cannot. You cannot, because it's not. I've not yet made it public yet.
oh,
It's just.
okay, it's
It's
not
just a
public yet.
directory.
Okay, okay, okay.
It's just a tenant, but I've not
Okay,
hosted
got
an application on it.
got you.
So
Yeah.
until I upload an application or publish an application there, so it's not the
Okay.
application URL I will share externally
Yeah. Okay,
to
okay,
people. So you cannot access the tenant, because it's not like a
okay.
public tenant. It's a B2C tenant that is still managed within my own organization.
Organization.
Because
Okay.
yeah, there's a concept of single tenant and a multi-tenant. Now, a
Okay.
single tenant or a Azure tenant that has access, that can access other services on a dedicated environment, is considered a single tenant. Now, because this tenant now, I have other tenants, it has other tenants under it. This is the B2C tenant I created initially, right? I created the other B2C2 with another account. Even because You can see that I have two B2C accounts there. There were two users, two different global admins that I used to create them, basically.
Mm.
So that's why it was because this was the account I used to create this particular one. That's why this guy is seeing it. So until I give the other guy access to the other B2C, or I give this guy access to the other B2C that was created by another global admin before it will be showing here for me. So for an Azure, a multi-tenant environment, right? It access other services in a shared environment across multiple organizations. So I can create other tenants also here. I can create other tenants here as well, other directories. Or I can invite this user into other directory and the user will be able to access other directory. So that's the concept of a single tenant and multi-tenant. Then another concept is the Entra directory itself, right? So each Azure tenant has a dedicated and a trusted Entra directory. So the Entra directory includes the tenant username, the groups, the application, and it is used majorly to perform identity and access management function for the tenant resources. That's the Entra directory. Then another one which we'll consider, let me go to the Entra ID, is a concept called custom domain. Custom domain. Now, when you set up a tenant initially, right? Every new Microsoft Entra directory comes with an initial domain name. So when I created this tenant, this was the domain name that came with this tenant. It's a default domain. So if Microsoft needs to troubleshoot anything that has to do with my invoice, my billing, and all that, this is a domain they will ask for because this is one they know because they're the one that provision this domain for me. Now, when I have users in my organizations, I can create user accounts Ibrahim at invarious.tech.onmicrosoft.com. This is too long. So I had to add my own custom domain. So these three domains here, or the four domains here, they are custom domains. This one here is for to help route emails because that's mail.onmicrosoft.com. So it's still part of the initial domain that Microsoft created, right?
For Exchange Online.
For Exchange Online, exactly. Now, for this now, it was a custom domain, even though I purchased the domain on Azure, but it is custom. It's tell you custom. I tell it is verified. Is it federated? No. And I made it my primary domain. So it will tell me how many user resource currently referencing the domain name. So it could be users, group, applications that are currently using that domain, right? So for custom domain name, right? So in addition to the initial um, name that Microsoft provide, you can add your organization domain. Your organization domain could include the name that you do business and your user used to access your organization resources, to list. So like google.com is a custom domain. Microsoft.com is a custom domain. Even Microsoft tenant is Microsoft.onmicrosoft.com. But they can't use Microsoft.onmicrosoft.com for their users. So they have to get the custom domain, Microsoft.com. Then the last one that I mentioned is a Microsoft account. It's also called MSC accounts. Now for Microsoft accounts are majorly personal accounts that provide access to consumer-oriented Microsoft products and cloud services. Meaning that if I let me open an in private window, for example, now. And I go to outlook.com, for example. So with outlook.com, I can use my personal, I'm not sure I remember the password. So any Microsoft consumer oriented products like Outlook, it's going to also authentication. I don't have my phone nearby. Talk about OneDrive, Xbox, even the Microsoft 365 also. They're all part of consumers oriented products and cloud services, right? So you use this personal email. So we call them MSC accounts, right? You can use then even a Gmail. If you have a Gmail account, you can also, convert that Gmail account to a Microsoft account. Like my own Gmail account, for example, now if I go back, which I use a lot. So this is initially a Gmail account that I converted to a Microsoft account.
Okay.
So Microsoft actually give us the opportunity. I think I've reset the password. I remember. Sending me authentication. Use my authentication app to approve. Okay. So if I want to, maybe I have other Microsoft services like Xbox, Live accounts, right? So I can use it basically to access such. I don't have an Xbox, but should allow me to be able to access it because it's part of their product. I've never signed into Xbox before, but because I have an account that is an MSC account, so it signed me up. So you just want me to update my information
Okay.
automatically. So those are personal accounts. So they're different from the business accounts that an organization basically
Uses.
gives you. So those are the fundamental stuff that I let me cover today. So we'll move forward from there. So we're able to see how to create a new user the last time we met.
Mhm.
Let's go back to the Entra ID. So there are
I have
some,
a question.
yes, please go ahead.
If you want to create those, like the Exchange Admin Center, where do you get started with the Exchange Admin Center? Like
So
the way,
to get started,
for, yeah, say for example, you just want to get started with that.
so let's say, so first of all, you have to know which Microsoft cloud service I need first. Do
Okay.
I need Microsoft Exchanges for emails? Do I
Okay.
need it with SharePoint for
Okay.
file, for collaboration? Do I
Hmm.
even need Microsoft Teams too? So that will inform the subscription that you're going to purchase. So let's say I
Okay.
need just Exchange,
Okay.
right? I need just Exchange. So just for email, can just type Exchange online plans. So type compare Exchange online plans. So Exchange online plans are like three category. So you have the Exchange online plan one, which only give you
Okay.
access to 50 gig storage. You have the plan two, which give you 100 gig storage with additional features with data loss prevention and all that. Then
Okay.
business standard. So business standard gives you Exchange online plan one, and as well as Teams, SharePoint, and other things. So it also gives you access to install your Office application also, right? So for this now, it's selling to Bible. So what you just do is just to try it free. right? So you put in your details. It's actually very straightforward. Once you get it, I'm doing a trial. So limit to resolve. Pick one that show two identical. So anyone that sees two identical, right? Just to verify. Then how many people do you need it for? Even say one by default, they'll give you 25 anyway. You just say next here. So just put your personal email, your
Okay.
Gmail, your Outlook email, anything, your personal email. Once you put it there, you go next. The next page will tell you your signing details. That's when you now create your first user, which is the global admin.
Admin. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
After creating it, then the next step is to add your payment, add your
Mm-hmm.
credit card, but they won't charge you. You just want to
Okay.
to confirm your identities and all that. Once you're done, submit. So the global admin that you created, you also create a
Mm-hmm.
password too. Then just go after creating the admin. So just go to office.com. From office.com, just sign in. So that new global admin you've created, put the
Uh-huh.
username and the password to be able to
Okay.
access the admin center. So once you put the username and password, and if you come to the app launcher here, you'll see admin.
Okay.
So the admins will now bring you to the admin center for you to manage everything. So if you go down the page, let it load. You go down, you click on show all. So this will now show you all other admin center. So based on the subscription that you have, determine
Okay.
what will show here. The subscription I
Okay.
have is the IS, so it has all the admin center. Like if you
Okay.
do for just exchange online, for example, now the only admin center you'll be seeing is security, compliance, identity, and exchange. So you
Okay.
know
You
see
won't have
SharePoint
Intune.
teams, you know have Intune.
Okay. So at
Right.
what point do you now integrate what you have on Entra ID in terms of
So
um
the moment you create that tenant, it
mhm.
automatically creates an entry ID for you. That is why you have this identity
So it will now integrate with Entra ID. Oh, yeah, okay, okay, by default. Okay, so when
by
you now go
default.
to Azure, okay, so when you now go to Azure,
So if you now go
you
to
now
Azure now, you'll not be able
uh
to do anything in Azure
but you'll be able
except
to
on
log
Entra. You'll be able to
yes
log
on
in
it.
with the same account. You'll be able to log
Yeah,
in that account,
okay, with that
but you
account. Okay,
cannot provision resources. Why? Because on Azure you need subscription.
okay, so you now create a first subscription and the tenant.
Yes. Yes. So you can
Okay,
just go
okay.
to subscription there. No, the tenant is already created for you. So once you
Sorry,
go
it's
to
already created.
subscription, yeah, yes,
Subscription, yeah.
so just
Okay,
go to add. So it's now tell you the
okay.
different types of subscription that are available. So
Mm-hmm.
so
Okay.
the name you want to name the subscription, then the billing account you want to use. So if you have more than one billing account, then the
Mm-hmm.
profile you want the subscription to have, and all that. Once you're done, select your plan, which is the most important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Add a different type of subscription. So to check eligibility for you based on so are you eligible for free trial for subscription now? P as you go, are you a student? So there's student subscription also available. So you'll be able to
Okay.
see other offers too. I just sponsorship. This one I'm currently using. But just the subscriptions. So there are a
Okay.
lot of so
Okay. Now I get it. Okay.
yep. So the subscription in our provision here is what use to provision resources on Azure, basically.
Okay.
So let's go back to Entra ID. So under the manage the user, right? So just to explain some basic things about the user, you've created a user already. So I mentioned that you can either create a new user or invite an external user.
Yeah.
So in creating a user, that means you need to fill the basic things first, which is one of the most important things. So anyone that is asterisk, they're important. The user principal name. So you have to enter a unique username and select a domain. So if you have more than one domain, so because I have more than one domain, so that's why
Okay.
I have this here. So domain
Okay.
that you want the user to be to use basically. So you select it. Then if you don't have any domain, you can add custom domain, which you're going to show. Then the nickname is default by is grayed out because so if I uncheck this, I can put a mail nickname that I want to use. So basically, if you need to enter an email nickname that is different from this user principal name here, but most
Yeah.
times the user principal name and nickname are always in, so this is always checked, so you don't need to create that again. Then the display name of the user, maybe the first name, the last name, or whichever
Last
way
name.
you put it
Mm-hmm.
there. The password you want to check if you want the account to be enabled immediately. You check this. Maybe the user is not resuming yet. Maybe the
Okay.
user will be resuming in one time. You can still
Okay.
leave it on check, so the account will be disabled just for
Okay.
security purposes. So once that is done, if you go next for property, right? So property, you have additional information you want to put in the first name, last name, that is step 4. So job title, you want to put job title, the company name, the department. So depending on the attributes that you know as an organization, this will have been defined.
Mm-hmm.
The job title, the department, because
Yeah.
sometimes as you're creating the user, you want to create what we call a dynamic distribution group. So for each of the departments in the organization, you've already created a group for them. So you don't want to situation where as you're creating the user, you now want to start assigning the user to the group. And in the dynamic group, you've already specified, right? Maybe a department attribute is what you'll be using. So automatically,
Example.
users
Can
will
you give an
be.
example?
So let's say we'll discuss group after now. So I will show you that practically.
Okay.
Let's say, for
Okay.
example, this is in the IT department, for
Mm-hmm.
example, now, and I already have a group that has been created for IT department.
Okay.
So instead of me coming under assignment here manually to now start adding the
Adding
user
group.
manually to a
Okay.
group, I don't need to do that. The moment I'll
Okay.
just skip all these steps, right? Review and
Mm-hmm.
create. By the time I create the user, automatically, based on the based on the attributes that are specified, department IT, the user will be automatically added to the IT department. Or
Okay.
any department that has that um, dynamic query that says on any users from this department should be added to this group, maybe a group, a Teams group, a SharePoint group, right?
Mm-hmm.
These will be automatically be added there. That means you're automating the user creation process, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what then there's some contact information you want to fill for the users also. You can fill them maybe from the HR system that you guys are using, right? Then parental control, maybe there's some groups that they are minor. You want to specify these also for that. Then you want to specify this. Then if I go back to that assignment again, so you can either add them to group or you can add them to roles. So there are some roles that they should have access to, right? So because of the automation, if you have a security group, for example, now that already have role assignments already, so automatically once you create the user, just look for the department of the users from the query. It has user to that department. So every permission, every role that is added to that those group have permissions to, automatically the users also inherit that as well,
Okay.
without you needing to start doing manual process for the entire thing. So let's quickly jump into group so we can see. So once we review and create, let me see if I can just create this. So the nickname is automatically picked from here. So maybe I want to use a different display name. So I've created the user. So let's create a group. So basically, what Microsoft Entra ID does is that it provides several ways to manage access to resources, access to applications, and tasks. So that means with Microsoft Entra ID group, right? You can grant access and permissions to a group of users instead of individual users. In other words, you are limiting access to Microsoft Entra resources to only those users who need access to one of the security core principles. So call it a principle of zero trust, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of group creation, the Entra ID lets you use group to manage, like I said, access to application, to data and resources. And generally, resources can be either part of an Entra organization, such as permission to manage objects through an Entra ID. Maybe the user is in an IT department, he needs some IT role, or external to the organization, such as you have some software as a service applications, those enterprise applications I mentioned earlier, right?
Mhm.
You want users to have access to it. So you might not even need to grant user, like what I did for one of the enterprise application that I grant individual access, right, to this application. Instead of using individual, I could as well use groups because adding here says either add users or group. So let's say the group, I have an IT group. I'm not sure I do, but I'll create it if I don't have, because I will need it. So I have IT administrator group like this, for example now. So let's say I want every member of the IT administrator group to have access to the application. Maybe the application is just meant for the IT department, right? So automatically, let me assign this. Okay, this is just an assigned group, so it might not even be useful eventually. But let's see, I might need to change the name, but it's fine for now. So if I've created our groups, the dynamics distribution group, right? User is automatically added to the group. Let's say the group is already having access to the applications automatically. The user will also have access to that application through that group permission. Now, again, the resource can also be maybe an Azure service, a virtual machine, Azure storage, SQL database, Azure SQL database. It will even be a SharePoint site or even some on-prem resources. It could be any of them. So user will have access through that group. So that's one way to make role assignments easier in the organization. So with that particular features. Now it is also very important to note that some groups cannot be managed in the Azure portal, meaning that come to Entra ID groups. I don't have them here, but I want to show you example. Let me go to all groups. Any group that is synced from your on-prem Active Directory can only be managed on-prem Active Directory. That's what it means. Most of all this group or all this group I have here, they are because I don't have identity synchronization. I don't have on-prem here yet for this. I don't have any group created from on-prem. Any group is synced from on-prem that were not created from here, you cannot manage them here.
Okay.
That is one.
Even though they've been synced together with AD Connect, right?
Yeah, you still have to go back to the Active Directory on-prem to manage it.
Okay.
Still have to go. Then I have some other groups here. So this group, for example, now it is called a distribution group. Distribution list or mail-enabled security groups are managed only in Exchange Admin Center, Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So I need to explain that for you so that you know. Now, for the sake of this class, I'm just trying to so that you don't get to I don't bombard you with too much information. Let's say I click on new groups here. I want to create a new groups here. I want to show you two different things. Group types. I'm seeing two types there. Security groups and Microsoft 365 groups. I'll explain the two differences for you.
Okay.
Meanwhile, let's go to the Microsoft 365 side and let's come to Teams and Group here. Then let's select Active Teams and Group. In Azure, we only have two. You have what? Security Group
Security
and
and
Microsoft.
M365.
Now, in M365, we have we have what called distribution list. Then we also have security groups. We have the M365 groups. Now, if you go to where's Exchange? You come here and click on groups here in Exchange. This is what we have. We have what M365 group, distribution list, dynamic distribution list, and what mail enabled security
Mail.
groups.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, for our Azure, these are the two groups that we can manage. That's what it means.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meaning that even though we have other groups that are showing here, like distribution groups, yeah, showing here, we cannot manage it in Azure. What we can only manage is either Microsoft 365 group or security. So what is actually the difference between these two groups? Or why do you have these two different groups? Now, there are basically two types of groups. Or let me say there are two group types, which is security groups and Microsoft 365 groups. I'm talking about Azure now. If I'm talking about Exchange, it's a different conversation. You understand?
Yeah.
So focusing on Azure. The security groups is used to manage user and computer access to shared resources.
Okay. Users
For
and computer.
computer access to shared resources. For example, you can create a security group so that all the group members have the same set of security permission. And for security groups, members of the security groups can include a user, it can include device, it can include or called service principals. We'll talk more about that, and other groups, which you call them nested groups, with a defined access policy and permission.
Mm.
Again, you can create security groups so that all the groups have the same set of security permissions. And the members of the security group can include users, devices, service principals, and other groups. Other groups, which you also we call it nested group, and they have a defined access policy and permission. And the owner of security groups can either be a user or a service principal. And it's very important to know that when you are nesting an existing security groups to another security groups, only the members in the parent group will have access to the shared resources and applications.
What do
Meaning
you mean
that
by nested?
so let me give an example. This is one security group.
Okay.
This is another security group.
Yeah.
I can put this group inside this group.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
That's nested.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the primary group here are the ones that will have um, access to the shared resources and application. The one I put inside, they don't
Mm-hmm.
have the same assigned membership.
Why? Are they not already same part of you've nested them together?
So that's Microsoft for you. The way they design the system. So if I go here,
So even though they are nested together, that does not mean they will share the same. They
they
will
don't have the
have the
same
same
assigned
assigned
membership.
membership.
Yeah. So if I click on add member here for individual, I think each other want to add to groups. UITP. When you're creating this, let me select this first. Refresh. So the primary one that is here, which is the one outside, you can see that it's still here. Just that it's just a member of the group.
Okay.
It's not as if you're moving inside it, but you're just
Mm,
making it a member of it. So that's
okay.
security group there. Now, for M365 group, basically, what they do is that they provide what we call collaboration opportunity by giving group members access to things like shared mailbox, calendar, files, SharePoint sites, and more.
Okay. That is for M365.
M365 is just for collaboration.
Those for collaborations. Okay.
And it allows you to give people outside the organization access to the group. That's another thing that M365 group does. And
Okay. If required, right?
yes, if required, you can bring other people from outside the organization to the
Okay.
M365 group. Maybe they want to collaborate. Like you have some partners that are not member of the organizations, right? And they want to collaborate on a project, so to say.
Mhm.
So they need access to SharePoint site, they need access to calendar and all that, shared
So what
mailboxes.
would be the responsibility of the SharePoint administrator on that?
Yeah. Let
The
me just
SharePoint.
explain the group. I'll explain the
Okay.
SharePoint part of it for it, right? Now, in terms of collaborations, in terms of collaborations, the SharePoint administrator, instead of okay, the fastest I can explain it is to let me go to SharePoint
Especially for external collaborators.
administration. Yes, let me go to the SharePoint admin center so you can see.
Mhm.
What SharePoint administrator is doing is managing this SharePoint site.
Okay.
So anything the SharePoint administrator has configured here affects the entire organizations. So if I go to policies and sharing, for example, now, at the moment now, this is set to anyone. So that means external
Okay.
people too can also access it. The moment a SharePoint administrator turn this down to only people in the organization, even though those guys has been added to the MG5 group, they will not be able to collaborate
That's for external, right? Or even
for
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 individual.
external for
For
external
external. Okay.
because this take precedence SharePoint too.
Okay. Only people
That's
within
why
the organization,
that's why
existing guests.
that's why this is grayed out. That means there's
Okay.
no setting for
Okay.
this.
So so that thing is as you draw it up, as you bring it down, it becomes strict. As you take it up, it become less strict, sort of.
Exactly.
Okay. Because I'm seeing
Exactly.
anyone new and existing guest, only people within the organization.
So that's what happens there.
Okay.
Now, the difference between M365 and security group, I mentioned first that M365 provides collaboration opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and it also allows you to bring people outside your organization to the group. Now, the members of an M365 group can only include users. So you must get the difference between M365 and security group. For security group, the members of the group can be users, devices, service principals, and other groups.
And they must all be internal.
Internet. So it's everything you've created. Maybe you have
Yeah.
users in the organization, you have devices that
Mhm.
you're managing,
Yeah.
right? You have service principals and groups in your organization. But M365 group can only include members. You cannot have devices there. You cannot have the service principal.
Okay. It's just members.
Yes, members. Users, rather. Users.
Okay,
People that have
users. Yeah.
username and password, those are users,
Mhm. Okay.
not devices. The
And
only
you can
thing is
include
that
internal and external.
internal and external, exactly. The only thing there is that the owners of M365 groups, because you have group owner, right? The owner
Mhm.
can include users and service principal, but it can never be a device. It cannot be a device. It cannot be another group. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, sure.
All right. So those are the two type of groups. So let's create two groups. Let's create the first one so we'll be able to see. Let's create a
Mhm.
security group. This is group description is optional. And put it now for security group. Now it gives me the option. Do I want Entra roles to be assigned to the group? Yes or no? If I say no, that means I'm saying that I don't want this group to have Entra ID roles to be assigned. If I say yes, that means I want it to be assigned. You notice it too? When I say yes here, the role is added. But when I said no, it's just like any other group that I can assign owners, right? That I can assign owners and members. Now, for for the group type, now you have security and M365. Then for membership type, we have three types: assigned, dynamic users, and dynamic device. Let me explain that. Now, for
Okay.
assigned here, let me go here to M365 so I can be seeing the two at the same time. Are you seeing this now?
Yeah.
For M365, I only have what? Assigned
Outside
and
and
what?
dynamic
Dynamic
user.
users.
No
When I
device.
change it to security group, I have assigned dynamic users and
And
dynamic
dynamic device.
devices.
Hmm.
So that's another difference between them. Now, for an assigned group, what it means is that it lets you add specific users as members of a group
Okay.
and they have a unique permission. That's for assigned. But for dynamic users, that was what I was explaining earlier, that when I create the user and I set the department to a particular value or attribute. So a dynamic user lets you use what we call dynamic membership rules to automatically add and remove members, meaning that any attribute that you've created, you specify, right? If a member's attributes change, maybe the person is in sales department, because the person's department is sales, when you created the user, it added the user to the sales department. Let's say the user is not changing department from sales to marketing. So
Mm.
because the role of the user is changing from sales executive to marketing executive, right? And the department is changing. The moment you change the attribute from sales to marketing, what happens is that the user will be removed from the sales team automatically and will be added to the marketing team automatically. So that dynamic users let you use dynamic membership rules to automatically add or remove device. meaning that if the members attribute change, the system looks at your dynamic group rules for the directory to see if the member meets the rule requirements, is added, or the user does not meet the rule requirements. At that point, it is
Okay.
removed. That's for the
Mm.
dynamic. Then the dynamic device. So again, I said security group can be a users, a device, service principal. Now for dynamic device, it helps you to use the dynamic group rules also to automatically add and remove device. So this is focusing on device, meaning that a device is assigned to users in a particular department, right? So because of that, it's the device is added to that particular security group. The moment the device attributes change,
Change
the system,
in what context?
maybe the device is now assigned to another user in a different department.
Okay.
So what the system is going to look at is going to look at the dynamic roles, right? For the directory to see if the device still meets the rule requirements. If it meets, it's going to add the device to the new group. And if it does not meet the current one, it's going to basically remove it. So let's create um assign. I don't currently have a device here. Maybe I have to provision a VM and how this way
Okay.
we can see.
Okay.
It might not be today, maybe next class sort of provision VM. So let's create a assign one, and for the group, you can select owner. Let me make myself owner. Member.
So the groups will always have an owner, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then you now select the members.
Members. So for assign, you're the one, as the name implies, you're the one adding the members manually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's been created, right?
yeah, it's been created. Let's search for it. So to tell you it's a security group. So for every
Yeah.
group, users, groups, device, they have an update ID, right?
Mm-hmm.
It tells me. So if this group was actually created on-prem and it was synced to the cloud to tell you the source, there's an on-prem group.
Okay. Okay. But if it's created in the cloud, it will show cloud.
Cloud. So any group that is cloud, it means that you can manage the group on Azure. But
Okay.
any group that was synced from on-prem, you cannot manage on Azure. You have to go back to on-prem to
Okay.
manage the group.
Okay.
Seconds. Now for the other one, let's create an assigned entries file group also.
Okay.
The notice for this one is creating a group email address.
Okay.
That means you can actually send an email to that group, and every
Okay.
member of that group will see the
We'll
email.
receive the email. Okay. Okay.
That's what it means. But for a security group, there is no email
Okay.
created
Okay.
for those groups.
Okay. So I have a question. What is different between these and when you create a distribution, a distribution list? Does that mean that will be created on the Exchange Admin Center instead of on intranet, on the intra, on IDM, on Entra ID?
On Azure, right? So you cannot create it just because the work is completely different.
Okay.
A group email
Mm-hmm.
is different from a group list.
Okay. Okay.
For a group list, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me go to Exchange and show you that. You go to the distribution list here now. So you want to add a group.
Okay.
So yeah, you have to select distribution.
Okay. Okay.
This is why not create the MSI group printed. Now for distribution group, you cannot use it for collaboration.
Okay. Yeah,
Meaning
because
that
the distribution.
yes, it's just distribution.
Okay. Okay.
Just to distribute the email to them. Maybe you're trying to send email to 10,000 people in your organization.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of sending email to the one after the other,
Okay.
you just create a distribution list for them. That
Okay.
distribution list, you've added them as a member. So once an email
Mm-hmm.
is sent to that distribution list, it goes to them. The way the
Okay.
group work, let me see if I have any group in my Outlook here. The email is not going to, in distribution list, the email is going to the mailbox
Okay. There's a
of
mailbox
individual
that is
user.
created.
Yes, no, of individual user
Okay, of individual users. Okay.
users.
Okay.
I want to share. I just signed into my Outlook here. Let me just show you something. This is my testing environment. Let me just close this. Now, this my account is a member of groups. This is the group here.
Okay.
So that group that I created, they will have it like this. So when an
Okay.
email is sent to that groups, they will see it here
Okay.
because they are member of that group.
So that's the
But
one
a
we are creating
distribution,
on Entra, right?
yes,
Okay. Okay.
empty sphere group. You can also create
Okay.
empty sphere group on Office 365 actually. You can also create it here because here it will tell you, look, I listed it for you. You want to create
Okay.
empty sphere group,
Okay. Okay.
distribution,
Oh, the solution.
may
Okay. Okay.
enabled or dynamic distribution. You can even see here that we don't have what we have is mail enabled security group, which
Yeah.
is also different from the security group here. It's different because this one has mail with it. And they can give access to resources like OneDrive, SharePoint, and admin roles. But for this now, so far you had a group of people here. The email they are receiving, they will receive the email inside their inbox here, not in the
Okay.
group here.
Oh.
They will receive it as so that the email was sent to them directly.
Okay. That is the one created on Entra ID, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
No, the distribution group is the one they will receive here. The one you create here. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
the one you create. But if I select this, if I select M365 group, where they will receive the email is the group. Yeah, they will see the email in the group. That email has been sent to that group. You'll see it. On the other hand, if I select a distribution group here, where the email will be received is their inbox. The email will be in their inbox here. I don't know if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense. Makes sense.
I need to second. So let's finish with it. So this here, there's an email right? So that's the email of the group that is showing, that will show. Okay. So let me even add myself assign. Let me just make it assigned here. Let me add myself as an owner and a member. So you see if it will populate for me. Made as an owner. So I'm creating two assigned groups for both security and interest group. Then we'll now create dynamics group later when we meet again tomorrow. Then assign that one Entra ID role to be label. No, great. Yeah, fresh. So I have the two. So here is security. Interest is 5. This as an email. Why this is not an email?
Okay. Okay. We'll see the two now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So what you do, I'll drop it in the chart for you.
Mm-hmm.
Type it on Notepad. So the user you'll be working with, just to
Okay.
um, you create 5 users of your choice. Just click randomly. Choose and create 4 groups. Um, the group to Microsoft 365 groups and to security groups. It's assign permission, assign membership. Okay. Okay. It